Hi there. My name is Lucas Weiss, and I am the host of the Weesesports Quarantine Chronicles. For today's episode, I'm interviewing McKinley Hunt. McKinley is a member of the Rugby Canada's NSW15 squad. In this episode, we chat with McKinley about her journey getting into rugby, playing for Queens in the national team, battling an ACL injury, as well as how she is staying motivated during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the 10th episode of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles, and I want to thank everyone who has subscribed, liked, commented, and viewed all of my episodes. If you want to see more Weesports Quarantine Chronicles content, make sure to subscribe to my channel on the bottom right hand of your screen. This is episode 10 of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles. All right, so today for the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles, I am pleased to be joined by Canadian rugby player McKinley Hunt. McKinley, welcome to the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. And full disclosure, McKinley and I both went to the Country Day School in King City. And I want to start with a little story because McKinley is someone who actually got my broadcasting career started back in 2014 when she let me know of an opportunity with Rogers TV to commentate rugby games. It was a lot of fun, and McKinley basically, long story short, I'm going to have to owe you 10% of my earnings when I make it big in broadcasting.
I look forward to it. You've done well with it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, rugby's so much fun, and you, of course, as a rugby player, you've played rugby for quite some time, and we're going to get into your career, but let's just get started because I know back at CDS you were multi-sport athlete, but what gravitated you to the sport of rugby?
Yeah, like you said, I did play lots of sports at CDS, played basketball, volleyball, ran track, lots of things. I think I was just intrigued, by the success that CDS had with rugby because they were such a successful program before I started playing. But I think I was just so intrigued by the ability to play a full contact sport as a female. There's not a lot of opportunities to do that. And it was just one of those things where I was just drawn to the contact and that team camaraderie that I didn't think I could find anywhere else.
You mentioned that team camaraderie, and I can't think of another sport like rugby where the team camaraderie is so central because there's so many different positions and the team has to really operate together. Can you just elaborate on the importance of the team chemistry in terms of allowing a team to be successful on the pitch?
Sure. I think rugby is unique in that sense because it's one of those sports where you truly need the commitment and the strengths and attributes of every single player that is on the pitch. There's 15 of us on the pitch at any one time, and every single position is so crucial. And because it is so full contact, you really have to have strong relationships with your teammates because you are hitting each other constantly in practice. And then in a game, you're in a full contact situation. So it's kind of funny because even the teams that we play against, a lot of times, we can go really hard on the pitch, but after we're always friends, even if you have friends on the other team. I think it's just because we have this understanding that, it's our job to play a physical game, but you have to have strong relationships because at the end of the day, everyone is so crucial to the success of the team. And you can only be so physical if you have an understanding that you're going to be friends at the end of it.
That's so interesting to me because I find that in many sports, you talk to athletes and they say they rely on the rivalry and wanting to beat their opponent in order to win a game. But you're mentioning how despite the physical, sometimes violent nature of rugby, you can still be friends after. I'm just curious about that dynamic.
For sure. I mean, it's not to say that we don't have rivalries like that. Those still exist. I mean, I can remember in high school, Trinity College School, that was a rivalry that I, would go to the grave. I would never lose to them. I didn't want to. But I did have friends who played for Trinity College School. And at the end of the day, we would still be friends. Same thing. I really, Queens and Guelph have a great rivalry, and I have friends on that team. It's the same as playing the United States. I think any Canada-US game is going to be a tough one, but we have lots of friends who play on the US, and, you know, after a game, we'll all have dinner together and it's as if nothing happened. But for those 80 minutes we're on the pitch, one of us is wearing red and white, the other one's wearing blue, red, and white.
And describe that mindset for you, McKinley, to get to the point of where you are now to getting on the pitch and being like, attack the other team and tackle the other team.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think of myself as someone who's aggressive in nature in my normal daily environment, but I think I kind of can flip a switch when I get onto the pitch. And I think a lot of it is, a lot of athletes talk about, you know, their pregame routines and kind of the system that they work up to with a game. And I'm no different. I have a very set out pregame routine that I follow. And I find if I follow that to a T, I'm able to, you know, when that final whistle goes at the start of the game, I'm able to flip that switch and can become very aggressive in a rugby sense. And then when that final whistle goes, I can kind of flip that switch off again. I think that's really important. You can't live, you know, on the edge constantly. But it's just finding the routine that works for you. It's different for everyone, but for me, it's just having that routine that I'm able to like progressively kind of get closer and closer to kick off, and then be able to just, that whistle goes, go and hit someone.
Do you have like jam, a pregame playlist, like without giving all of your state secrets away? Like what are some of like the superstitions or normal pregame routines that you have before a big game?
Yeah, I think I can't give everything away, but I'm pretty consistent with the food that I eat before a game, just to keep that consistent. And then I'm pretty consistent. Depends on the time of the game, because if it's an evening game, I've got to kind of hold the reins back a little bit longer as opposed to like an afternoon game. But I just kind of time it out. So I'm pretty good at kind of shutting off until about 2 to 2.5 hours before the game actually starts. And then usually with the team, we have a bit of an activation, which is just kind of loosen out, play some good tunes. And then I get into the team room, and that's when I really start focusing. And I'm not one of those people who likes to be around people in those moments. I like to be more by myself, just to kind of get into my mindset. But then before a game, I can't be by myself because I get too much in my head. So we'll have a lot of team dance parties. Can't say the songs that go on, but
of course.
Yeah, it's fun. There's lots of banging of locker doors, and it's awesome.
Well, I remember from watching you play at CDS, like those pregame chants, and like in rugby in general, those pregame chants give you the chills. And I'm sure for an opponent, they're like, uh-oh, we're about to get our ass kicked today by this team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it right now. We haven't played rugby in so long. So I definitely miss those, you know, those last 15 minutes before a game when you're really starting to, you know, get the adrenaline going. It's an experience and a feeling that I can't describe, and I don't think I will be able to replicate it with anything else.
You obviously had a very successful rugby career at CDS. When was the moment that you then set your sights on making the national team?
I think it was after my grade 10 year. I played the sport in grade 9 and just kind of left it at that. I didn't play any club or anything else. I think after grade 10, I realized I really enjoy this sport and I'm really passionate about it. And I think I can take this further. I didn't know how far I wanted to take it or how far I could take it. But I ended up joining a club team that year. It was my club coach who suggested that I might be able to make the national team. And so from that point, I think I just was very driven in terms of just following the logical steps of what pathway I needed to take in order to get to the national team. But it wasn't something that I went into the sport thinking I'm going to play for Canada. It was never on my radar until I realized how much I enjoyed the sport, that I was actually decent at it.
No, you're being very humble. You were more than decent at it. But what is that adjustment like from, you know, being just playing the sport for an extracurricular purpose to now training to get to that national level? Was that adjustment a bit challenging for you at first to overcome and achieve?
I think when I look back, I think to myself, wow, that should have been more challenging than it was. But in the moment, I think it just kind of happened organically. I just kind of evolved to try to change my mindset. I think the mindset difference is basically just that, everything that I do on a daily basis, the food I eat, how much I sleep, the hours that I allocate to certain activities is all geared towards the goal of winning a World Cup in 2021. Whereas when I played it for fun, it was just like, I'd go to practice and I'd focus at practice, but it was never constantly on my mind in a business-like manner, where now it's very much on my mind on a daily basis as like, this is my job. It's not my job, but it's something that consumes my daily routine.
You mentioned that business aspect. Did you lose any of the fun aspect of playing the sport, knowing that it's now, like, quote unquote, your job, that you have to work each and every day in order to get to that goal? Because I know for some athletes or sports fans, like, they're a different fan before going into the media when it becomes a job and you're not as big of a fan as you once were. So I'm just curious, like, do you still have that same fun that you did as your job now before, when it wasn't so much your job?
Yeah, it's a real thing where you lose your interest in it. And I'm no stranger to that. My probably second, third year of university, maybe in a little bit of my first year, I hated it. I didn't want to play the sport anymore because I had enjoyed it so much at the club level, and I had enjoyed playing at the provincial level, at like the U18, U20 level. And in high school, it was fun. There was no pressure. And I think I got to university and, the phone calls and emails started coming of, well, you can play on the U20 national team, or you can do this and X, Y, and Z. And I felt so much pressure to succeed, not from external sources. No one else was putting pressure on me, but I was putting pressure on myself to succeed. And it became to the point where I just didn't want to play rugby anymore. It wasn't fun. And I was just kind of showing up and going through the motions. I was still having success. I made the U20 national team. I was all Canadian, but I didn't have fun. And I actually think that's probably the one why I'm playing rugby, because I could have easily said, I've had what some would consider to be a career-ending injury. I don't need to go back. But I realized that I did actually enjoy the sport. And then this past season, I had more fun than I've had since high school playing rugby, and I didn't feel pressure. It was great.
So let's dive into the injury that you said you tore your ACL, and it's obviously a very serious injury for many athletes. Can you just describe the play that happened that led to the injury?
Yeah, so I was it was in May 2018, and I was at a East camp for the national team, and it was our first gathering since I made my first appearance with the senior national team in 2017. And I'd had a good inter-squad game, and it was about 15 minutes into the game, like not far, was not fatigued, anything. And I ended up just making a tackle that I could make in my sleep. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And my leg just kind of awkwardly swung out and hit the turf. And I just remember it kind of bouncing off the ground, and I felt this pop in my knee. And I knew something was wrong. I didn't think it was my ACL, but I didn't know, but I knew something was not right because I was in a lot of pain immediately. So it's kind of just a fluke moment that just everything changed.
And I'm sure that moment of speaking with your doctor and your family about finding out the diagnosis and where to go next must have been pretty challenging.
Yeah, it was tough because luckily they were kind of able to expedite the process of getting that MRI and getting some answers, but I still had about a 7-day period where every sportsman that I saw said, we actually don't think you've torn anything. We just think you've got a really bad sprain, because everything around my knee had been able to counteract the fact that I had no ACL. So any tests they did manually basically was coming back negative, saying that everything was fine, which was not true. So then to finally get that phone call to say, no, you actually have no ACL, was a bit of a shock to the system. And it was surprising though, because when I did get that phone call, I was like, oh my gosh, like everything's changed for the foreseeable future. But it's pretty quickly, your brain just kind of goes into autopilot and knows exactly how to react to the situation you're in. It's very surprising.
Did you ever consider handing up the cleats, McKinley?
No, that never crossed my mind. I think I was actually more determined to prove to everyone that I could come back as a better athlete and a better rugby player when I had finished the rehab, versus saying I could be done with this.
And speaking of your rehab, I know that you posted a lot of your recovery on social media, and particularly Instagram. And I'm just curious, what compelled you to do that? And did you think that served more as a motivation for athletes and rugby players to say, like, here's someone that's a world-class athlete recovering from an injury. I can also do that if I'm struggling with injury to get back to that top level.
Yeah, I don't think I ever really was like thinking big picture when I was posting that. I think it was more just like as a motivator for myself, because I felt like if I could show people that I was successful with my rehab, that I actually was being successful with my rehab. But I did get lots of messages from people saying that they appreciated seeing what I was doing, because they found it motivating, even if they weren't injured, to go out and, get their workout in for the day type of thing, and to not make excuses, because especially when you're in rehab, you can't make excuses. If you make an excuse, to do one exercise, that one exercise could, completely inhibit something and could add 6 weeks to your recovery 9 months down the road.
No, for sure. And that's so important to just stay focused on rehab, because like for you, once the rehab was done, you got back on the pitch, and you mentioned how much fun you had post injury. I'm just curious, can you just describe that first game back and what it meant to be back in the thrill of playing with your teammates and on the pitch in such a great game of rugby?
Yeah, my first game back was amazing. It was definitely a freeing feeling, because I knew that I had put in so much work to just even get back onto the pitch. But it's a weird thing, because you think about that first game. For me, I thought about that first game for over 16 months. And because I had been cleared, but I still didn't have the strength in my knee to actually fully get into a game. So I'd been thinking about it for so long. And it's strange, because that first game was by far probably not one of my best games I've ever played, but I felt so free in that game, because I knew the work that I had put in to get there, that it didn't even matter that I wasn't even playing to the level that I had been at before my injury. And it takes a couple of games to kind of get your confidence and get back into the swing of things, because even though you train, you do all that mental preparation work to, kind of fight the demons that can kind of come into your head to tell you that you're not ready or you're going to get hurt again. You do just need a couple games to remind yourself that you are back and that you're fine.
And what did it mean for you at Queen's to win the OUA championship in 2019, a year after you had an injury and you didn't even play?
That championship was probably one of the best feelings I've had ever playing rugby. That was 5 years in the making, and so much work had gone into that. We beat Guelph twice this season, and I had never beaten them in my university career. So to beat them one time in the regular season was amazing, but to then win the school's second OUA championship, it was just indescribable. Like, that whole game just felt like a dream. Like, it was one of those things where, like, when I watched back at the film, like, no one could do anything incorrectly. Like, the ball couldn't get dropped. It's like every single one of us had magnets in our hands. Like, it was just one of those games and one of those days where, like, you strive to recreate that feeling, because you don't get it that often.
Well, I know they're going to be probably trying to strive to recreate that feeling potentially in a few months down the road, the 2021 Rugby World Cup. You're going to be on Team Canada, and I'm sure that's exciting for you, but also it must be a little bit daunting because we're in a pandemic right now, and rugby and social distancing don't necessarily coincide. So how are you staying motivated during this time when no one is playing sports right now?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging to stay on track. I think it's been helpful. We're having a lot of communication with our teams, and we've got these daily skills tasks to do just to keep our skills sharp. We're talking quite a lot over conferencing applications just to keep our relationship strong. And then at the end of the day, it comes down to your physical preparation. So for me, it's just been doing a lot of conditioning and strength work to maintain all the work that I did in the off season ahead of the situation that we're in now. So it's just kind of trying to keep things as normal as possible and not get too far ahead of ourselves and think about any of the potential things that could happen down the road, but just try and take it one day at a time.
And how those previous experiences, I know that you've been on, the national team for a few years now, but like how those previous experiences helped you prepare for this potential moment to now be competing at the World Cup representing your country?
I think it's just accumulation of all of the work that you put into it. I think for me, I think the ACL is a big part of it, is that you learn to just take every day as it is. And even if something big is happening, you just try and treat it as if it's a normal day. And I think that's just how I'm treating this whole process, because, my early stages of my career, I would put so much pressure on myself and get so stressed out about my performance that I actually had performance anxiety. When I got onto the pitch, I couldn't deliver what I knew I was capable of. So I spent a lot of time working with a mental performance coach to try and overcome that barrier. So I think now my mindset going into the selection cycle for the World Cup is just to try and treat every day as a normal day and just show up, do what I can do, and show what I'm capable of. And at the end of the day, that's all I can ask for. And hopefully that will be sufficient for my selection.
And finally, McKinley, like we've talked about, you've had a very accomplished rugby career, but are there any goals that you have left to achieve? And if so, what are they before you finally hang up the cleats?
Yeah. My goals, I still have a few. Unfortunately, we didn't end up winning a national title in November, which was a key goal for us at Queen's. So we're luckily hosting national championships this November in Kingston. So that is a goal, to win a national title. And obviously the goal is to win a World Cup title for Canada. That's never been done by the Canadian national team. And I think we have a good shot to do that.
McKinley Hunt, she is a rugby player representing Canada. Thank you so much for joining the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat with you.